like if you do not provide people with an alternative to not using AI, they would end up using AI. Conversation that I had with CEOs last year. They said we have put a blanket ban on AI. We are not using AI in our business. And we had a survey developed that would encourage people to share what they are doing with AI. And one of the organizations they identified, there were 40% of people were using ChatGPT or some other AI tool.
We are going to have to get a lot better at prompting. How do I get better at prompting AI?
You provide it with the role, you provide it with the context, and sometimes you actually ask it to come up with the questions. So by asking ChatGPT to ask questions, you are actually urging it to think deeply about the problem that you're trying to solve and come up with a much better response to your problem.
Welcome to the Dumb Monkey Show, where we aim to simplify AI for business leaders. We are, of course, as always, joined by the founder of Dumb Monkey and Enterprise Monkey, Amir Khatub. Amir, hi, how you doing?
Hi, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So we've come back today to talk about all things AI in business. And you and I had been chatting off air about an incident that came up or a news story that came up that discussed a case of a ChatGPT being used by an employee at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and the result of that being a direction to a customer, to a business that sounded very much like the business that they were seeking, but actually wasn't the business that they were seeking. It's a bit of a multi-layered story. The part that particularly flagged my attention was the fact that this is what happens when we use large language models, that they will fit in, if they don't have all the pieces, they will go for the piece that seems like it's the right piece and has enough of the pieces, and then will confidently supply this answer. And of course, in this case, I'm skipping, of course, over the company protocols that said you shouldn't use ChatGPT. If anyone's listening, please pay attention. If your company has asked you to use or not use AI in certain ways, it's probably a good idea to pay attention to the employee rules. But it was a really nice example, I think, of, look, it's a way that employees can use large language models to find things, but also how they can find problems at the same time.
It is. And it's one of the learnings for the companies as well. Like if you do not provide people with an alternative to not using AI, they would end up using AI because you've got all of these amazing large language models that people are using in their day-to-day work, like ChatGPT. It's so great. People are using it in their personal work. Now, if you say, oh, don't use AI, don't use ChatGPT, there's something convenient, they're going to use it. Unless you provide them with an alternative and say, don't use ChatGPT, use enterprise version or use it in this way, train them on the protocols, work with them and help them embrace these tools in a safe manner. Because they're like, again, the example of my 4-year-old kid. If I ask him not to do something and say, don't do it, and if there's something lucrative, he's going to end up doing it. So it's about actually navigating them safely and saying, if you are using AI, you need to understand what it does. ChatGPT is a great tool, but it can hallucinate, it can come up with the information. You need to check it. And these are the preferred ways of using ChatGPT or Copilot within your organization.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Amir. And I think it's a really important one because we need to keep reminding ourselves that as fast as AI feels like it's developing, we are still very much at the beginning of this journey. It is going to change a lot of how we function, both in our lives and in our work. And part of that is bringing everyone along. So, yeah, I think that's a nice idea or a nice point, a really valid point, that when problems like this come up in businesses, and they will, so we need to acknowledge, and they will, we can't say that enough, these problems will come up in business. Yes, they will. But it's a great opportunity to then sit down, work with your teams, work with your employees, and help to both educate them a little bit, but also find if there's any gaps. Sometimes the things that people do in our business that we don't want them to do, tell us where the gaps are in our thinking.
Yes, and it reminds me of some of the conversation that I had with CEOs last year. They said we have put a blanket ban on AI. We are not using AI in our business. And we had a survey developed that we said, can you please share this with your employees, make it anonymized? That would allow you to check whether people are actually using AI or not. And we put it in a format that would encourage people to share what they are doing with AI. And one of the organizations they identified, there were 40% of people were using ChatGPT or some other AI tool within the business, where their business had a complete ban on AI. Yeah. So if you're not like banning AI or saying don't use AI is not the solution. The solution is to embrace AI, set up policies around it, provide guidelines, and most importantly, train your team members on how to use AI.
Which leads us into a really interesting area that I have been really waiting to have a discussion with you about, because I think that one of the great skills that people are going to have to take moving forward in the workplace and in life, but particularly in the workplace, is that we are going to have to get a lot better at prompting. And I feel like I'm not that great at prompting yet. I like prompting. I find it really interesting. I like to throw a whole lot of different ideas into some of the different models and see what comes up. But I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Amir, how do I get better at prompting AI?
Well, there are few techniques and few strategies that you can use to be better at prompting. And I think prompting is one of those skills that is going to be one of the most highly regarded skills in the industry, no matter who you are. If you're doing some sort of white collar work, like how you are supposed to know typing, how you're supposed to know how to communicate with people, express your ideas, prompting would become that skill. Now, there was a misconception where people talked about prompt engineering. So some people came up with the term prompt engineering to say that prompting is a very technical skill. It's an engineering skills. That's something that you have to learn and almost develop a specialization in. And what we saw was that there was a rise in the when you look at the job requirements that are out there, people were looking for prompt engineers or prompt engineering skills. But that has declined. But what we are seeing is that overall understanding of AI is a skill that we are seeing more and more in the job descriptions, which means that like you don't see that you need typing as a skill in the job descriptions anymore, or using Microsoft Word as a skill in job description anymore, because that's something that is inherently expected if you are coming to work in the workforce. Similarly, prompting is something that is now expected that you be a part of it. And the reason it's not prompt engineering is because engineering is something that is technical, that requires you to have a degree, have understanding.
It's quite a specific skill set, isn't it? It's a niche skill set and things that you need to stop and learn and go away. Whereas we would treat prompting as
a skill.
It's a communication skill. It's a bit of play as well.
It is. Like you would delegate your work to your team members, like you would manage your team members. That's something that you learn on the job. There's no course or certification for being a manager or a delegator or a communicator. You can do training on that. There are frameworks that you can follow, but there's no rigid formula.
No, that's right.
And so similarly for prompting, there's no rigid formula. For people who like to have some structure in their life, there are some prompt frameworks that we can use, and I'm going to talk about that. But if you don't like the structure as well, it's about practicing and learning, and there are some strategies that I'm going to share that will help them be better at prompting.
Fantastic. So where would we start? Amir, where would you start with this conversation? In a workplace, and I'm going to sit there in front of you and say, hi, Amir. Most of my job is about communicating. I need to tell a lot of stories. I like to come up with a lot of ideas. That's part of my role. And I will often turn to one of the GPTs. I'll turn to one of the large language models or a multiple of the large language models to give me some ideas on what I can write about, or to critically assess a piece of writing that I've done, or to generate some ideas. I'll try and do some image generation, and gee, that's something where prompting is really important, because I don't know how many of you have turned up an image that's got 6 fingers, and even though you've asked it to not put any text in there, it just still puts text in there. What am I doing wrong? How do I get better?
So let's take the example of communicating internally with the team. So imagine you are now embracing AI, and that's something that you want to communicate to the team. And I'll probably open up my ChatGPT. So a poor prompting practice is that you would use ChatGPT as Google and say, give me, so if I say to my ChatGPT, give me strategies to communicate internally with my team on AI enablement.
Absolutely. Let's dive into it. And hey, I'll keep it real and maybe toss in a clever quip or two. Set the tone with straight talk. First off, it's all about keeping it honest. When you talk about AI enabled.
So now what it's going to give me is a very generic advice that's going to pick up. It's because it doesn't know any context. So one of the frameworks that we use is called SCORE, which stands for situation, context, objective, role, and expectation. So in that case, I would say something like, I'll start with a situation. So my situation is that I work in a traditional construction company and I am looking to enable AI in the organization and I want to communicate that with the organization. The context is that my company does commercial construction, been in business for 30 years, and we have got around 300 people in our team, 15 project managers, 40 construction workers, and so on. The objective is to bring everyone on board with AI, especially we are embracing Copilot, so everyone understands what AI does, what are the risks, what are the challenges, and why we are implementing AI to ensure that we get better efficiency and productivity from the people. Your role is you are an excellent internal communicator. You have years of experience working with traditional industries, helping organizations communicate complex topics in a very simple way to the team members. And my expectation is that you will give me a one-page simple explanation that I can send to the team members. So now it's going to process.
I've got you covered. And don't worry, I'll keep it nice and straightforward with just a pinch of clever humour where it fits. Let's break it down like we're explaining it to a buddy over coffee, no sugarcoating needed. Bringing AI on board, what's happening and why it matters. We're on a 30-year journey in the construction game, and guess what? We're about to give it a bit of a
So the overall output that you would get out of just because I provided the situation and the context and the objective is going to be much better than I would say that, just give me some tips. So that's one example of a prompt framework. There are a lot of prompt frameworks that's there in the book behind you.
The CEO who mocked AI.
That's
everybody.
right. So, and there are more frameworks that are available on the Dumb Monkey Academy. But if you are a person like me who don't like to follow frameworks, I don't like to follow frameworks.
So for those of us who like to freewheel?
Yes. So there are some things to keep in the mind. First is because AI is so generic, it doesn't understand when you are asking it for an opinion or advice, what context are you asking it for and what is the role that it needs to play. So a very, very basic thing is you provide it with the role, you provide it with the context, and sometimes you actually ask it to come up with the questions. So I would say in this case is, hey, you are an expert communications person. This is what's happening with my company. I want to do this. But before you draft a communication, ask me 5 questions that will help you clarify and provide me a much better draft. And just by providing this prompt saying, give me 5 questions, ChatGPT will come back to me and say, okay, clarify what you need, clarify all of these. I will answer those questions and then it will provide me with a much better response. So anything that I have to do with ChatGPT, rather than saying, give me this, I would say, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to do this. This is your role. But before you do this, ask me 5 questions or 10 questions that will help you clarify what I am after and then provide the response.
Yeah, fantastic. So what I'm hearing from that, and I think if I was translating this for a friend or an audience that maybe is a little bit unsure about AI and is a little bit concerned about their ability to prompt, I'd say that what you're trying to do is have a conversation with the AI, with the model, explain to them who you are and what you want to do, and then ask the model to ask you questions.
Absolutely.
To help you.
And similar to you hiring an intern who is coming to your organization, you delegate them a task, but say, before delegating them the task, you say, do you have any follow-up questions for me? And then if the intern is good enough, they will say, okay, yes, what about this? What about that?
Great interns always ask questions. That's a life lesson. If you're looking at interning, if you get into an intern role, please ask questions, lots of questions.
Yeah, but great consultants ask questions, great bosses ask questions, like the whole fundamental of business transactions relies on asking questions. Innovation relies on asking questions. So by asking ChatGPT to ask questions, you are actually urging it to think deeply about the problem that you're trying to solve and come up with a much better response to your problem.
And you're also providing a whole lot of context around the situation that you're trying to provide an output to. I mean, that's the whole point. We're asking, it might just be some ideas generation, but if you're specifically looking for an output, then you really want to have that context and that situational awareness.
And you talked about talking to AI. One thing that I do a lot is I talk to my ChatGPT a lot, like every time. And when I'm talking about a concept, sometimes, because if you have got your memory enabled, it understands who you are and your context, which is very important. if you have got a paid version of ChatGPT, you can enable memory in there. Or even with Copilot, it understands who you are, where you're coming from. And then you just have to remind ChatGPT about that particular instance. So I'm
going to, can
Yeah.
I just take you back
Yeah.
a step? For people who haven't enabled this feature before or perhaps are unaware of this feature, can you explain a little bit about where they would go to find that and then how they would start to use it?
Sure. So in ChatGPT, if you go to settings, there's an option called personalization. Over there's an option called memory. You need to turn it on, and then it remembers the conversation. Then second option is the custom instructions, where you can tell it who you are and what you do. That's something that we touched base on previously as well. And in Copilot also, if you go to settings, there's an option called memory, and you can turn it on, and then it remembers who you are and what you do, but also remembers the conversations that you are having it with it. So slowly it starts to understand who you are and starts to get better in providing you the responses.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So sorry, I interrupted you.
No, so I was showing like one of the examples of how I would conversate with ChatGPT. So, hey, what's up?
Hey there, not much, just here and ready to chat. And don't worry, I'll keep things straight up. I may be throwing a bit of clever humor when it fits, so go ahead and hit me with whatever's on your mind.
You remember the podcast that we are recording nowadays?
Absolutely, I remember that. We've talked about your Middle Class CEO podcast, and we've also got the Dumb Monkey podcast in the works. So whichever one you're talking about, I'm definitely on board. Let me know what you need.
Yeah, so with the Dumb Monkey podcast, you know how I'm running out of the ideas for Dumb Monkey podcasts, and you know what's happening in news nowadays. Can you suggest me with some ideas about what can we do with Dumb Monkey podcast?
Sure thing. Let's sprinkle in some quick humor and keep it real. I'd say for the Dumb Monkey podcast, you could totally riff on whatever wild or wacky eye stories are hitting the news. Like if there's a robot that's suddenly a chef's grandmaster, or some AI that's messing up recipes hilariously.
So what I did over there was I started talking to it and said, remember, we are doing this. And then said, okay, you're doing 2 podcasts, which one we are talking about? I said, okay, we are talking about this. So instead of having to provide the context again, because it has got the memory, I just had to remind it. Similar to the person, like if you would remind a person and say, hey, remember, we were working on this project. And so you can start to have that conversation. Once it has the context, then you can start to ask it more questions.
Here at the Dumb Monkey podcast, we don't sell AI products, but we do recommend, and you've multiple times, I think, in our conversations have recommended the paid versions, particularly in a business context. Can you tell me about why, and we've seen this, you know, I'm going to go back to this example with the CBA staff member that was using a free version of GPT versus an enterprise version of the software or the AI that the company was particularly using. What are the benefits for people in business to be using an enterprise level AI as opposed to using a free version?
So first of all, in CBA's case, even if they were using enterprise version, it would have made the same mistake because AI tends to hallucinate. And what the person was doing was they were asking, give me the contact detail of this company. And it was fetching the contact details of the company with the same name.
So it was using it like Google?
Yes. So what would have worked over there was if the person was trained enough to ask the question with the context. So give me the contact details of this company that's based over here, that does plumbing services or whatever it is. And from there, the second thing, what would have worked with a paid version of ChatGPT or enterprise version is if this person would have set up custom instructions saying, if you are not sure about the answer, then give me the confidence level. And that's something that I do when I personalize my ChatGPT or Copilot. Say, if you're not sure about the answer, give me the confidence level. And if your confidence level is low or medium, tell me the sources that you are looking for.
Oh, that's a great tip. I haven't done this before. I know what I'm doing after this recording.
Yeah. Another thing that I do is I always, in my custom instructions, I would put something like, if you are not sure about my question, then ask. And I would write ask again. Unless I get irritated or you are not sure about, or you are 100% sure about what I'm asking. Because you have to train AI to understand the context that you're asking about so that it can be a helpful assistant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope people that are listening and watching are starting to get a sense of that AI prompting is quite different to doing a Google search or any kind of a machine learning search. So you're not just looking for the pattern of the answer that will turn up. You're actually asking for a more holistic, a more broader answer that's coming out of these AI models, because after all, I mean, that's what they're for. They're not just a search engine for the internet.
Yes, and AI prompting is more closer to talking to a human with a difference. The difference is that this human has a condition called short-term memory loss. So this human doesn't remembers the previous conversation. But imagine someone sitting in US with a phone line and everyone is calling this person. This person is very knowledgeable and asking that person questions. And when you're calling that person, if you're not providing enough context, the answer that you would get would be very generic. But if you provide the whole context, then the answer that you're going to get is going to be much better. So it is similar to interacting with a human, but a human who has no idea about who you are. It's not like interacting with your coworker at the moment because you're working with a normal assistant. And secondly, it's like interacting with someone who doesn't have any memory or context.
You brought up something for me when you were talking about that. So in a previous life, I was a journalist, and in a previous life, one of those roles that I did was as a music journalist and working in the entertainment industry. And it sounds really glamorous, but it's not. I just knew it's not that glamorous, although every now and then you do get to do really fun interviews. But what would happen in a media context, though, if it's a band or an actor or a group of actors that have been working on a film, for instance, they will do what are called media call days. And a media day or a media call day is where this poor person sits in the seat. So for the instance today, you, Amir, are on show. You've been wheeled out by the production company, by the music company, by the film distribution company to generate media. So you are going to sit there and you're going to have someone that you have never met that has very little context about you. They've got 15 minutes of your time. They're going to sit down and ask you these same questions that all of the other people have answered. And after about the 4-hour mark, you are going to be giving the same answers over and over and over again. And a funny thing that happens, of course, is that because this is an interaction, this relationship is reciprocal. So it probably doesn't feel like it for the talent that's in the room. But as a journalist and as a writer, hopefully we've done some background. And when you're giving me generic answers, I can see them.
That's right. Yes.
And I've heard them before. Yeah. So the job then becomes, how do I build a rapport with this person? In those 15 minutes, how do I build a rapport? How do I find a way into the specific sort of angle that I'm trying to get to? Or how am I trying to bring something that's a little bit different and unique? I'm trying to get a little bit of their personality out, or a little bit of how it felt or that was interesting for them about this project that they were working on. So I was looking for something quite specific, and it was my job to prompt the person.
Yes, because this person has all of the knowledge about their field. They are extremely talented.
And I have very little.
And you are trying to extract knowledge out of them, but they need to know, what do you actually need?
Yeah.
What's your context? They don't know your readers. They don't know.
So if I give them the same 10 questions that everyone else is going to answer, to ask them, I'm going to get the same answers.
That's right.
That everyone else gets.
Yeah. But they don't also know the format of your show. They don't know whether you need long answers or short answers. They don't know your audience as well. So giving them all of that context about your audience, who's going to read it, what's it for, would actually allow that talent or that actor to provide much better answers.
Yeah, indeed. So now we're having these conversations, but we're having it with an AI.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. So I think there's a lot to be learned in that space around how we communicate, what are the things that we're asking, and the challenge, one of the big challenges of that is that it's actually asking of us to stop and really think and then be clear about what it is we're trying to do.
And
how often do we do that in a work context?
We don't actually, and that's like we are running from one thing to another.
These are really new skills, right?
It is, yes.
So we're often drawing on knowledge that tacit knowledge that we already have and that we've built up over time. And it's really hard if someone asks you to sit down and explain what it is that you do. Hi, Davina, how do you ask questions in an interview context? I'm like, how do I ask questions in an interview context? I would have to really stop and think about, what is my process? What do I do? what am I trying to do, and then find a way to communicate that clearly.
That's right.
That's what we're all
You
asking.
raised a very important point. So one of the things that we are doing with a lot of companies when we are helping them develop what we call as a brain or an AI brain is with Copilot, it can read your files, it can read your meeting notes, read your emails, but still a lot of knowledge remains within the mind of the brain of the people that
So
work
that's
with.
what we would call tacit knowledge.
Yep. Tacit knowledge. That's a good term that I've learned. What we try to do is we take that tacit knowledge and somehow document it, not just to train AI, but for the sake of the organization so that we can actually have all of that knowledge. And the best way to do it is if you actually get your staff to sit in a meeting and record that in a Teams meeting and just ask the questions like, how do you come up with the idea of a story, or how do you do this? How do you do that? And when they casually describe all of that, we can take that transcript and then use some prompts to convert them into SOPs and standard operating procedures, but very detailed documentation. Now, those documentations are there in your SharePoint, which means everyone can learn from it.
So step me through that. Take us back.
Yeah.
Because I think that's I think what you're describing is actually a really useful, perhaps not jumping off point, but perhaps a really useful second point for people to understand what's happening with AI and then how they can functionally use it. So something they can actually put into practice pretty quickly. So we've brought in a team of people. We've sat them down. We've opened a Teams meeting. Why do we open a Teams meeting? It's because it provides a transcript and records that meeting. You can ask it to do that for you. And so presumably in this context, we're just doing a transcript through Teams. So we've got our transcript. What happens next?
So we say, this is the transcript of Davina, who is working as comms manager in our organization. She has described this process or these processes. Take these and convert into a standard operating procedure. One shot, convert this into a very detailed guideline on how to do this particular role. And then we have that document which is ready, which actually tells us step by step on how Davina does this particular thing. Now we can use that, convert that into training material through AI for other people. We can use that for knowledge transfer as well. But we are also preparing the organization that when we would have AI agents that would be subordinating you, then they would be trained on that material so that you do not have to go back and explain your work. The agents would be able to train on that particular work and take most of the grunt work and do that. You would still be managing that work, but ultimately a lot of stuff that you have to do in your process can be actually done with the help of AI.
I heard you pick up on AI agents, and I think that's a conversation that I'd really like for us to expand out, and perhaps even in our next episode, that's probably a nice one to come back to. But if we stay on the topic of prompting and then how organizations, how businesses can be starting to think a little bit more, think in a more targeted way, think in a more actionable way about how they can help their staff and themselves to learn how to do this. I mean, we make these assumptions that business leaders are walking in and kind of going, oh, they know what to do. But of course, they're specialists in their own field. They don't need to be specialists in AI. And a lot of this work that we're doing, a lot of this chat that we're doing is about making it a bit easier for them to go, okay, well, here's some tips and tricks that you can take into your business, go and have a play with, see what works for you, and then start rolling it out. Actions are great. We love actions.
Absolutely.
So we've got our team of people. We've set up some standard operating procedures. We're now understanding that a really nice way to take notes in a meeting. Oh, I tell you what, if you take one thing away from here, if your team works on Microsoft Teams or whatever meeting, whatever meeting format you do, Zoom will do the same thing for you. But if you can record your meetings and get a transcript out of it, that's a wonderful
that's
thing.
amazing. And talking about recording, I've got something over here. I'll show it to the camera, but to the listeners, it's a little device in my hand called Plod AI.
Yes.
And I can use it to record any meetings. I can use it to record the phone calls, of course, after seeking consent, or just walk into a meeting and record.
I'm going to pause, Amir, there and say, please ask consent
100%
before using this. We have laws around what you can record and when you can record it. So asking consent will absolutely, and then gaining consent, waiting for someone to actually agree to that consent and give you consent.
It is, yes. So it's not just saying, by the way, we are recording this
Yes,
call.
you can't
Do
just tell
I have
people
your
you're doing
permission, like an explicit consent to record the call? And
Sorry. And then,
Yes.
and then I'm looking at this thing in a piece of wonder going, oh my goodness. For someone who used to sit there and have to record interviews on a phone with wires on the back and two little buttons on a tape recorder, this little piece of magic here is making me so happy.
Yeah. And I've tried it in like a very busy coffee areas, very busy meeting rooms. I just put it and it would record both of our voices, understand who those people are, and provide me not just with the transcript, but the meeting notes, actions. And then I connect with, there's an automation tool called Zapier. So actually that takes those meeting notes, creates actions out of it, and sets up tasks for me, but also creates the new calendar entry for me.
Fantastic.
So like after I'm done with the meeting.
You guys as excited about this as I am, because how cool is AI?
It is, yes. So talking about prompting, and we were talking about like if you want to start implementing it with your team. One thing is that take those prompt frameworks and talk to your team members and see in your role what are some of the activities that you are doing.
Yeah.
And
so you've talked about SCORE as a prompt framework.
Yep.
What might be some of the other prompt frameworks that people can point to? And we would absolutely encourage them to grab the book or go to the Dumb Monkey Academy. But for the sake of conversation here,
sure. So there's another one called Learn, and it is actually used when you want to develop a piece of training material. And the way it works is L stands for learning, the actual learning that you want to provide. E stands for example of the type of content that you want to produce. A stands for something which I don't remember. And
that's why we go to the book and to to the academy.
Yeah. And so on. So like there's a great framework that we can pull from the book and look at. There's another framework called CORE, C-O-R-E, Context, Objective, Role, and Example.
And we've talked about this before.
Yes, we have. Yes, yeah. So that was CORE.
Yeah.
This is CORE. So this is not adding situation, but just talking about the CORE, which is Context, Objective, Role, Example. So there are quite a few different frameworks, but the best way to look at, like if you can't remember frameworks like me, then the best framework to look at is what is the context, what is the role, and ultimately what is the objective, what are you trying to achieve. If you just follow these three things, that would give you much better results.
Sorry, where am I?
Yeah.
In terms of what's my business, give us some background. What's my role? Because we're asking the AI to speak as us or to act as us, or someone like us. And then what do we need?
Yeah, but also what is your role? So whenever I'll start talking to AI, I will always specify that you are an expert strategist who's award-winning and who has worked with Forbes and whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't want to be dismissed. I was speaking to someone the other day, and we were talking about this, about role in AI and about having the AI come from a certain perspective. And he just looked at me and he said, it's just easy. Just tell the AI that you want it to operate from a school of philosophy and whatever your school of philosophy is. I don't have a school of philosophy.
Yeah, but you can provide it with what you aspire to be. So, for example, if you want to hire a consultant from McKinsey who has worked with likes of Uber or whatever.
I tell my AI all the time, I want it to be Arianna Huffington, and then make me sound like that, please.
So it can be like that, but can't probably make you sound like that.
Well, no, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
For those small moments, I feel really good about it.
Yes. And you can say act as a whatever, like act as a consultant, act as a marketing manager, act as a job description writer.
We talked about this in this podcast before, and it's something that I think we're going to come back to again and again and again, is that AI models are extraordinary. They're developing very fast. They can do some wonderful things to support us as humans, but they can't replace us as humans. And when you are talking to another person, when you and I are talking like this, what we're actually looking for continually is clues and pieces of information, small pieces of information that tell me that you're authentic.
That's right.
That tell me that you want to be here, that I can trust what you're saying, that you are listening to me, that what's our relationship like. And these are all things that are happening in our thought processes that we don't stop and pay attention to, but they are there. And boy, do you see it when it's not real. So, for instance, there's a great comment that goes around a lot that's like, oh, that's so ChatGPT.
That's right. But there's a way to change it as well by right prompting. So first is by setting the instructions right, but you can also tell it how you want it to sound like. And that's where a prompt which is tone comes in, where you can actually tell how you want the tone to be. You can get it to mimic the tone of a particular person, or can give it your brand tone, which brings me back to the context. So we talked about context in terms of defining the context, but a context that works really well is that if you can supply it with the material. So now we talked about SOPs, but your organization already have a lot of documents. Most of time when I'm conversating with ChatGPT or Copilot, I'm always providing it with context material or examples of the things that it needs to work on. So when I'm asking it to produce a blog, for example, I wouldn't say produce a blog or this is a tone. I would attach my brand tone with it, because then it would understand what it is. But before doing that, what I have already done is that I have taken downloads of my previous blogs that I have written. I gave it to the ChatGPT reasoning version, because reasoning version is better in coming up with the thoughts. And I said, these are 20 blogs that I have written. Look at these blogs and understand the tone of how I write and what I want to communicate, and give me a tone context. It would give me my tone context, and then I'll save it. And next time when I'm trying to create a blog, that's when I'll upload that tone context along with my brand tone to create a blog.
Okay. And when you say that you're uploading it, where are you saving it and where are you uploading it to?
So I'm saving it on my system. And if I was using like normal ChatGPT, then I would, when I'm giving it a prompt, that's when I would attach it. But now we can create custom GPTs, which we'll talk a bit more in the next podcast. But even if you're not creating custom GPTs or agents, even in that case, you can just have it saved on your computer and upload it when you are trying to create a piece of content. So similarly for my LinkedIn, I've taken all of my highly performing, the most viral LinkedIn posts, downloaded them, gave it to ChatGPT reasoning version and said, give me what really ticks in these and how should my LinkedIn post be, what worked, what didn't work. And then it would do an analysis and will give me a piece of text that I would save. And next time when I have to create a new LinkedIn post, I'll use that as the context.
Yeah. Again, these are really usul things. So I'm being the dumb monkey in the room, but I'm going to keep asking you to step me through things.
And similarly, like if you want to create a job description, rather than saying create a job description, or no matter how much you explain it, if you already have job descriptions that you have already posted previously, you can take all of them and then share it with ChatGPT and say, create a job description, which is like this.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can do very well with Copilot, because you can just refer it to particular files or folders and say, make something like this. And now it has reference, so it wouldn't sound like ChatGPT or Copilot. It would sound like you because it's learning from your context.
So, I mean, context is something that's really important for when we're using AI and when we're implementing AI in our workplaces and into our workflows. So for business leaders, for people who are, just doing their job, who, for the poor person that I feel like I'm picking on them at the CBA Australia, don't worry, we'd all be doing it. It's okay. It's not just you. You've learned we're all going to grow together. What can we do? Tell me about the different levels of context that we can provide that will actually make AI something that can be really useful and start to bring that bit of tone and a bit of tacit knowledge.
So in my company, we have got 3 levels of context. First is the organizational level context, which is a file which has all of the information about Enterprise Monkey, our history, the people, the values, and all of those. Then we have got department level context. So we have got a context for the marketing team, context for the tech team, for project management team. And that's something that department uses. And then we have instructed everyone in the organization to have their role level context, where you define who you are, what are your KPIs, KRAs, and what you do. So whenever you are asking AI to do something, you would attach the organization level context, your department, as well as your role context, and then get it to provide the answer. And again, by setting it up in the personalized instructions or Copilot becomes really easy. But if you're not using that, having those 3 sets of context can get you an absolutely amazing personalized answer and can completely transform your AI experience.
That's fantastic. For a lot of people, when they are working in an organization that is beginning their AI journey or starting to roll out AI into their workflows, one of the first things that they are told and will be told vehemently and repeatedly is be very careful about what you upload into the AI. You must not put any company information on there. You must not put any potentially private information on there or sensitive information on there, which is absolutely true. Absolutely true. But again, I'm sort of asking a context question here. How much is too much? How do people know what they should be uploading and what they shouldn't?
So if you are not comfortable sharing information with AI, then you should not be using that for work. That's the most important thing. Now, if you're using a ChatGPT Pro version and you have disabled the settings which allow it to use your data, then your data is fairly secure. It's still going to OpenAI servers, but it's fairly secure. If you're using Copilot, then everything remains in there. So you do not need to worry about providing context at all. And the context that you are building is something that sometimes you're actually building from public knowledge. For example, the organizational context is an easy one. I don't even have to write all of that. I can just ask ChatGPT or Perplexity to say, hey, build me a context file, a detailed file about what you can find about my organization. I need tone, personality, and it will build you the context file that you can use. But in terms of your roles and your KPIs and your department, you need to be, again, careful of what version of AI you are using. If you're using a ChatGPT free version, I wouldn't recommend doing that because then it can use your data. If you're using a ChatGPT Pro version with the privacy setting turned on, then it's fairly secure. And if you're using something like Copilot, then I would say it's fairly secure.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm going to ask you to just go back again and take us through those level of context, because I think that is really important. So can you just for those of us who are sitting along and sort of saying, oh, we might need a cup of tea. I think I forgot what you said. To stop people hitting the rewind button the 15 seconds back, give me the 3 levels of context
So
again.
It's very simple, a context level file for your company, which tells what your company does, what are the values, the history, the context about the organization. The second is the department level context. What does the department does, what its role, what are the KPIs, what are the processes? And then finally, an individual context about your role in the organization, your KPIs, your KRAs, what are the things that you do within your organization. And when you provide all of these 3 contexts to ChatGPT or Copilot, along with your prompt, it would exactly know about your organization, the department, what you're trying to achieve, what are your goals, who you are, what are you trying to achieve personally, and then will provide you an answer or response that would be exactly what you would need.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. I think that's a really nice place for us to leave off today. There's a lot of really, really valuable information in there. There's some really nice prompts, I'm going to say. You've given people a whole lot of prompts on how to prompt.
Yes.
On how to help AI models to give us what we're actually asking. So really what we're doing is we're training the people how to use the prompting systems, aren't we?
That's right. And if you are not sure about prompts, just say to AI, hey, AI, you are an amazing prompt engineer. I don't know anything. You know everything. I want to do this. Help me create a prompt for this. And AI will generate the prompt for you.
It's the best hack. It is absolutely the best AI hack, is asking the AI to tell you how to write the prompt. So please, if you're going to take away from this episode, put it on a t-shirt, ask the AI to make the prompt for you.
Awesome.
With context.
That's right.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Dumb Monkey Show. I've had a great time. This has been a really fun chat. Thank you, Amir. Thank you for all of your information today. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, you can find us on your favorite places to get your podcasts.